is gone. A hole in the hull as big as Putin's ambitions for Crimea. That's all that's left of the FSB patrol ship Izumrud. And how calmly it was just sitting there in Novorossiysk. It thought, it's safe here, these are our people, nothing will happen here. Wrong guess. Our sailors have been waiting for this little ship for 8 years. And I'll tell you exactly why at the end, because the story is really juicy. And while this patrol ship is sinking, literally hundreds of others are going down around it. Tankers, tugboats, ferries. The Russians can no longer keep track of the corpses of their shadow fleet. What is really happening in the Sea of Azov, and what does the Izumrud have to do with it? Watch further. So, while the Izumrud was deciding whether to sink or not, a real maritime apocalypse was unfolding around it. The commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Brovdy, revealed a figure that should make every Russian's eye twitch. From July 6th to 14th, Ukrainian drones effectively struck as many as 116 vessels. Tankers, tugboats, ferries, cargo ships, all those vessels the Kremlin tried to secretly use to transport fuel and ammunition to Crimea while hoping no one would notice. They were noticed. Just on the night of July 13th, 11 vessels were hit. And the record was set on July 11th, 28 ships struck in a single night. Military analysts say the world hasn't seen such a naval tally since World War II. Not bad for a fleet that's officially the largest in the Black Sea, right? And here a logical question arises, why did the Russians suddenly make such a massive push by sea? The answer is simple, because things aren't going well for them on land either. Ukrainian medium and long-range drones are methodically destroying the ground logistics between Russia and occupied Crimea, highways, bridges, railways. Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War state directly strikes on fuel infrastructure are capable of halting up to 40% of Russia's oil refining. As a result, nearly 50 million Russians are already facing gasoline shortages. And this, let me remind you, is happening in Russia itself, not somewhere in Crimea. Putin had to urgently allocate subsidies to the occupied Crimea and Sevastopol. And the Kremlin, with a stone-faced expression, explained the fuel collapse as temporary difficulties. Temporary meaning gas stations have been empty for several weeks now. Yeah, right.
So that's the situation at gas stations in Russia.
So, as always, the Russians came up with a brilliant solution. Since the land route is burning, we'll go by sea. And they got an even harsher response. The Feodosia oil terminal, the largest on the peninsula, has suffered at least 9 successful strikes since the start of the war. Out of 33 tanks, only 5 remain intact. In Crimea, power outages are regular and fuel is no longer sold at gas stations to either individuals or businesses. Everything goes to the front, or rather, what's left after our strikes. I honestly don't even know how to behave anymore. I think I have only one nerve cell left because honestly, it's just all too much now. Dmytro Platenchuk, who serves as the official spokesperson for the Ukrainian Navy, provided a detailed description of the current maritime situation, choosing to speak with absolute clarity and directness while completely avoiding any form of unnecessary diplomacy or sugarcoating of the facts. The maritime logistics, which were supposed to save the Russians from a ground collapse, are now themselves deep in the red. And Mikhailo Fedorov even promised that Crimea will soon become an island. And it seems that this is no longer a metaphor but a plan. Even the combat units of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, according to Platenchuk, are unable to cover these transports. The Russians are so afraid to go out to sea again that they would rather sacrifice a civilian tanker than a warship. The logic is ironclad. Their own skin is more valuable than someone else's oil. But they did keep one warship in port, and it was this very ship that received a personal greeting from the Ukrainian sailors. The very same Izumrud, launched in 2014, over 62 meters long with a helicopter pad, supposedly a solid unit of the FSB border fleet. Ukrainian sailors destroyed it with the Sargan 3000 unmanned maritime system right at the pier in Novorossiysk. Satellite imagery confirmed a breach in the starboard side, a list and partial flooding. There are dead and wounded among the crew, but the Izumrud is not just another entry in the casualty report. The Ukrainian Navy reminded us why. It was this very ship on November 25, 2018,
took part in the attack on Ukrainian vessels in the Kerch Strait. What happened there at that time and why our sailors waited almost 8 years for this moment, you can see for yourself. The strikes occurred the day before at the pier of the port of Novorossiysk. The destruction of the vessel is also confirmed by a satellite image shared by the Ukrainian naval forces. Ukrainian naval servicemen sank the second-rank border patrol ship using the unmanned maritime system Serhan 3000 near Novorossiysk. There are dead and wounded among the ship's crew. It was the Izumrud that took part in the attack on Ukrainian Navy vessels in the Kerch Strait on November 25, 2018. Retribution is inevitable. More is yet to come. The Izumrud was launched in 2014. The vessel is over 62 meters long and is equipped with a helicopter pad. Here's how Russian channels reported on the handover of this patrol ship to the border guards at the time and boasted about its capabilities. The designers say this corvette is the most modern, capable of reaching speeds up to 37 knots and firing accurately at full speed with the gun mounted at the bow. 630 rounds per minute. Can you imagine what would happen if it hit an enemy vessel from the side like that? It could cut it in half. I can even say that we presented it to our close neighbor, the Finns, who said that we are ahead. Cutting the enemy in half didn't work out this time. Satellite images show that the Izumrud itself is seriously damaged and partially sunk, with a hole on the starboard side that apparently resulted from a drone explosion. But perhaps the most memorable episode involving the Izumrud was in 2018. It took part in the attack on Ukrainian vessels in the Kerch Strait on November 25th. At that time, the Izumrud, together with other Russian ships, deliberately rammed the Ukrainian tugboat Yana Kapu.
Come on, come on. 5 to port, 10 to port. Stop the engine, stop the engine. 10 to port achieved. Hard to port. Come on, damn it. Everyone hold on, damn it. It is hard to port over.
At that time, the Ukrainian small armored boats Berdyansk and Nikopol, as well as the tugboat Yana Kapu, were making the passage from the Black Sea to the Sea of Azov. There were 24 sailors on the wrecks, and several of them were wounded at that time. All crew members, as well as all 3 vessels, were captured and detained by Russia. This is how the news was covered by Vikna at the time.
Everything is happening right here. Here is occupied Crimea, and here is Russia. On the way to the Kerch crossing, here it is. The path of the Ukrainian ships is blocked by 4 Russian border patrol boats: Sobol, Mangust, Suzdalets, and Don. The last one rams the Ukrainian harbor tug. The ramming is deliberate and intentional. Later, the spokesperson for the Russian President Peskov would confirm Putin was indeed kept informed about the situation in the Azov Sea, and the Russian sailors from the Don boat got so carried away with ramming the Ukrainian ships that they failed to avoid their own and crashed into the Izumrud vessel. Photos of the damage have already appeared online. They tried to shyly cover the huge hole with a tarpaulin.
As usual, the Kremlin accused Ukraine of provocations. They claimed that Ukraine did not properly notify about the passage of ships through the Kerch Strait. Kiev in turn stated that Moscow had violated the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea and the Treaty on Cooperation in the Use of the Sea of Azov and the Kerch Strait. Ukraine then filed a lawsuit with the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. On May 25, 2019, the tribunal ruled that Russia must immediately release the sailors and return the seized ships. In the end, the Ukrainians spent almost a year in a Moscow detention center. On September 7, 2019, the sailors were returned as part of a major exchange between Russia and Ukraine. And already on November 18th, the 3 Ukrainian ships were also returned. Kyiv then stated that they were returned in a damaged condition. Already in 2020, the repaired boat Nikopol and the tugboat Yana Kapu were launched back into the water.
That's all for now, friends. Crimea is gradually turning into an island. The Shadow Fleet is sinking in neat rows, and the Izumrud got what it deserved, even if with an 8-year delay. Write in the comments which other ship deserves the same encounter with a drone. Also, give us a like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next episode.